I'm excited to introduce Mr. Tobias Flitch, Director of Product Management at Nebulon. Tobias, it's great to have you on. Take it away.
On-prem IT infrastructure. Now, if you look at your on-prem IT infrastructure landscape today, you may be thinking, wouldn't it be nice if I could just run all of these applications and workloads in a public cloud? Then I wouldn't have to worry too much about infrastructure maintenance. Automation is a lot easier, and I can manage it all from anywhere remotely. But of course, these workloads are on-prem in your data center or in enterprise edge locations. And reasons may be because you need lower latency than what public clouds provide. It's too expensive to run these workloads in a public cloud. You don't want to re-architect them and make use of the specific services of different cloud vendors, or you're just blocked by regulatory requirements and you can't move your data to a public cloud. And now for these workloads that remain on-prem, you're challenged with delivering a phenomenal infrastructure experience to the product teams and the application owners that make use of it. Or you're on the receiving end and you just struggle with the speed and the agility of your IT organization to provide you with new infrastructure on-prem. And at the core of these challenges is really the supporting IT infrastructure. It's because existing on-prem solutions were not designed to deliver the experience of public cloud on premises. Enterprises are challenged with slow application deployments due to the lack of the required skills in every single team. And these are required to run compute, storage, and networking services end-to-end and to support new application deployments. They're also challenged with high infrastructure management overhead, where the IT organization has to manage on a per device level. They lack end-to-end insights, and they're mostly occupied with mundane tasks such as firmware or software updates. And then there are only restrictive alternatives to expensive three-tier architectures that are quite complicated to manage and they're slow to deploy, which ties back to requiring highly skilled resources. And existing hyperconverged infrastructure alternatives that would allow the application owner to manage their own infrastructure limit workload density, and they lack support for native workloads that are outside of just virtualization. So they have to work with the complexity and the cost that is associated with three-tier architectures if they want to use bare metal for their applications or if they want to leverage native Kubernetes for their applications. With Nebulon, IT organizations are enabled to deploy, manage, and maintain on-premises enterprise application data at scale as simply and as rapidly as it would be in a public cloud. Now, if you are familiar with Cisco Meraki, you know the model. Otherwise, the way to think about how Nebulon does this is by applying the lessons from smart home consumer technology and applying it to enterprise IT, specifically in three relevant areas: the model, the benefits, and the use cases. Looking at the model first, in a smart solution in the consumer space, let's take Nest as an example. The control plane is moved to the cloud and it connects to IoT endpoints in a physical device, your thermostat, for example. And suddenly you gain immediate incremental benefits that are normally exclusive to the cloud. You get incredible time to value because it is super easy to deploy because it just plugs right into your existing HVAC system or simply connects to your home Wi-Fi. It's simple to automate for a variety of applications. In your home, you can adjust the temperature based on weather. You can control security cameras, lights, and other devices. And you can build entire routines on your own and when you need it. And you really don't need a technical degree or anything for this. It's really self-service infrastructure for your home. You'll also gain the ability to centrally control all of your devices from anywhere. Your software is kept up to date behind the scenes, and you gain the ability to leverage the intelligence of the cloud that monitors your preferences and constantly adjusts to better fit your personal needs. And the third parallel or lesson are the use cases. Taking Nest as an example one more time, it supports any application as a thermostat, for security cameras, for smoke detectors, anywhere in your home, in your office, your vacation home, and it adds better control to those use cases. Now, wouldn't it be great if you had the same capabilities for your enterprise on-prem IT infrastructure, for your virtualized applications, for your bare metal applications, and for your containerized applications, both in the data center core and at the enterprise edge? With Nebulon Smart Infrastructure, we bring the public cloud experience on-prem through server-embedded infrastructure software that is delivered to customers as a service. You get self-service application infrastructure provisioning for virtualization, but also containers and bare metal applications. So product teams and application owners can rapidly provision and scale their own infrastructure. You get infrastructure management as a service that ensures your on-prem infrastructure works reliably and most efficiently by using cloud analytics and recommendations along with behind-the-scenes software updates that keep your infrastructure fleet free from vulnerabilities that are caused by software or firmware issues. Plus, with a server-embedded data plane that runs entirely on a PCIe card in the server, you no longer have to rely on complex and expensive external arrays for your shared and for your local block storage needs. And you can simply use the server's SSD capacity without the density and the workload restrictions of hyperconverged infrastructure software. This is achieved by Nebulon's architecture that consists of two key components: a cloud-based control plane that ensures the operational simplicity, and a PCIe card that is embedded into your application servers that serves the data plane for your enterprise application workloads. With this smart infrastructure solution and its architectural approach to on-prem infrastructure, you get a single top-down solution that addresses key challenges for the core data center and also the enterprise edge. And since the reference architectures for Smart Core and Smart Edge under the Smart Infrastructure umbrella use the same technology, customers no longer have to decide for different infrastructure approaches for different deployment models. It's one smart infrastructure solution that works top-down across core and edge for virtualization, for containers, and for bare metal applications. Let's have a closer look at some of the core benefits. Let's first talk about self-service infrastructure provisioning. Now, a key challenge for IT organizations with their on-prem infrastructure is being able to quickly respond to new product initiatives and to deliver the necessary IT services to support the product teams and the application owners that want to make use of these services. Now, with traditional approaches, on-prem infrastructure provisioning is quite slow. The reasons for it are often organizational barriers, but mostly because traditional on-prem infrastructure is not built to deliver a public cloud experience. With a cloud experience, the problem is really solved by putting the application owner into the driver's seat, by allowing them to provision their own infrastructure. With Nebulon, this is done by means of a service catalog. This service catalog defines what operating system to deploy, what application, the right data storage services for that application. Now, having a service catalog makes infrastructure provisioning quick, reliable, and repeatable. What that means is that IT organizations can build a catalog of services that meet their company guidelines, and then the application owners can provision services and scale these services rapidly at the core or the enterprise edge wherever they're necessary. And they can do that consistently and without involving the IT team. Actually, let me show you. Let's assume I need a new VMware cluster. Right now, there are no clusters, or as we call them, npods provisioned. And all I have to do is create a new npod up here. And during the process, I select the number of servers. I select a template from the service catalog that's provided by the IT organization. Then I specify some network configuration options. In this case, I'll just use DHCP. And then I'll provide some basic identification information for the npod, like a name, and I assign it to my team. Now, once I request this new npod, the Nebulon Cloud will first validate all of my choices and check if there will be any issues with the deployment. Once this is successful, I can then confirm the creation of the npod, which kicks off a background operation that provisions all data services as defined in the template. This includes the operating system, the application, and the right data storage services for the application. And after a couple of seconds, the npod is built, and we can see the new npod in the Nebulon on web user interface with snapshot schedules, with the selected servers and their properties. And we can see that there are a bunch of volumes provisioned to all servers in the cluster as defined by my template, including the VMware boot images. And there was no SAN zoning, there was no multipathing or other infrastructure setup required. I was able to provision 3 VMware servers with all data services provisioned all by myself. Now, once the infrastructure is provisioned, it's all about keeping it running and optimizing for changing needs. With Nebulon's cloud analytics, we can monitor and predict changes and give valuable insights into your infrastructure that is relevant for configuration changes, for sizing, or for other planning activities. And the same insights can be used by the control plane as part of command execution. Since every command passes through the cloud, it can intercept these actions that are possibly harmful or misguided. Now, another major challenge for IT organizations managing large infrastructure environments is keeping firmware and software current. A major pain point here is navigating through compatibility lists and identifying the right mix of versions, and then rolling them out across many devices. With Nebulon, the cloud control plane with its user interface are constantly and automatically updated behind the scenes. So you don't have to worry about it. Eventually, you just get a new feature in the user interface, and after simple browser refresh. But when it comes to the data plane, the pieces that are running in your on-premises infrastructure, you are in control over when the update happens. And it's super easy to do. You can literally, by a click of a button, update a fleet of infrastructure. Now, every larger organization has invested in some form of automation for their infrastructure. Some are quite advanced, and some are still adjusting to this new paradigm. In any case, it is done for the same reasons, and that is eliminating repetitive tasks and doing more with fewer resources. It turns out that this is not very easy to do with on-prem infrastructure. It is a lot easier to do within public cloud because there's just one API and it's consistent across all services. But on-prem, every device has their own API endpoint. They have their own version and they have their own functional level. And all of that has to be considered when writing scripts or when you're designing automation workflows. With the Nebulon Cloud Control Plane, it's one API with one version that works and scales for the entire enterprise. That makes reporting and that makes automation so much easier, and that really helps organizations to achieve infrastructure as code and doing more with less. So the other ingredient to bringing the cloud experience to on-prem is a data plane that supports any application anywhere with better control. Now, there are many reasons why certain applications and their data is kept on-prem and is not moving to the cloud. And there's also many reasons why any particular application is using virtualization, Kubernetes, or bare metal as their infrastructure. Now, limiting your infrastructure to just support one type of workload will come with challenges, specifically because it restricts developers and the product teams in terms of design and architecture. An application that is built for virtualization is built quite differently than an application that is built on top of Kubernetes. So in order to quickly react to changing needs, infrastructure that is hypervisor agnostic and operating system independent is really required. That gives you the freedom of easily shifting services and support your application teams. Along the same lines, you want to have a cost-effective infrastructure that delivers the same data services in different deployment scenarios, in the core, edge, or as a hosted service, where the size is really the only factor that changes. So an application that is developed in the core is easily rolled out at the edge, just as at a smaller scale, but it still receives the same enterprise data services. Now, this is done by having an enterprise data plane embedded into the server, not on the CPU, because the CPU is required to run the applications, but on an IoT endpoint in the server, a PCIe card. That gives you higher density since you don't have, an external storage array, and you don't have to compensate for the CPU overhead of software-defined storage that would normally run on the server. Lastly, and also quite importantly, full control over the boot device and separation of data from the operating system is required. This is really what enables to quickly alter the personality of servers and application clusters from one application to another. This is what enables customers to deploy application clusters with operating system, with application, and the data volumes in just a couple of minutes. And this is also what enables customers to remotely update clusters without service interruption, because the data plane is not impacted when the operating system reboots, fails, or undergoes other maintenance. So why Nebulon Smart Infrastructure? Application owners and product teams are put into the driver's seat and can self-service provision their infrastructure from rack to the full application stack on their own, accelerating time to value. Massive gains when it comes to operational overhead through zero-touch, remote fleet management, AI cloud assistance, and API-first infrastructure management that is delivered as a service. You get cloud-like operations for your on-prem infrastructure. And by avoiding the expense of external storage arrays and avoiding the restrictions of hyperconverged infrastructure software, you gain significant efficiency and cost improvements. And lastly, with a solution that is operating system and application independent, you protect your investment for today, but also in the future. Now, if you can get all of these benefits for your application workloads in your on-prem infrastructure, you no longer have to force applications into the cloud that are better served on-prem. You can now start thinking about the cloud as an operating model instead of just a destination. Now, today I've just briefly provided an overview of Nebulon Smart Infrastructure. We do have a lot more detail to share, so please check out our resources on our website, nebulon.com/resources. Schedule some time with our solution architects that can walk you through all of the steps that I've shown you today and talked about. They can show you automation, and we can also facilitate remote proof of concepts where you can try this all on your own. In any case, thank you all for attending and listening. And I think it's time to answer some of your questions.
Great presentation, Tobias. We do have some questions for you from the audience, and while we take those questions, I've just brought up this poll for everyone out there that says, what additional information would you like about the Nebulon solution? And so this is an exciting new solution that I bet a lot of folks on the event today might not have heard of before. Tobias, you ready for some Q&A?
I am, yes. Shoot them over.
Excellent. Let's see. First question that came in, Guy is asking out there, can Nebulon allow us to instantiate multiple VMware clusters simultaneously? Can this be used with VMware, and could it help with that sort of automated deployment?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for the question. So yes, it works with VMware. In fact, it is hypervisor agnostic. It's operating system agnostic and application agnostic. So you could use the solution for your VMware clusters. You can use it for containers, for example, Kubernetes, but also your bare metal databases, bare metal applications. And for the specific questions of instantiating multiple clusters simultaneously, the user interface in and by itself for a single user will drive you down a path that you do one cluster at a time. However, it supports multi-user concept, so a different user can at the same time create a different cluster, of course. And then I mentioned it in the main presentation. Our approach to management is cloud-based, where we basically have a single API that is used by the user interface, but also by automation frameworks, right? Think Ansible, think Terraform, and if you're automating your infrastructure using various different programming languages. In that case, you can run as many simultaneous operations as you'd like. The solution would support that. But the user interface really drives you to do one at a time. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Excellent. And then next question that came in, they're asking, how do you make sure that no one deletes data in my data center in the cloud? Is that possible?
Yeah, that's a quite interesting question. In my presentation, I talked about that the control, right, the administration of your on-prem infrastructure sits in the cloud, and that of course has several benefits, which I talked about. But at the same time, right, there's now this element of management that is just sitting in the public cloud, and some of our customers are concerned about security there, right? So we've built the architecture for the solution with zero trust in mind, and basically what that led to is a unique approach to authorizing commands that affect your on-prem infrastructure. Now, if you think about the elements that are involved for changing infrastructure, you basically get three elements in there, right? You have your browser or your SDK that is issuing the command. Then you have the cloud that contains the business logic, and then you have your servers with FPUs in there that are in your data center, in your on premises. And now you see this triangle, right? This virtual triangle that incorporates all of the elements that are involved with infrastructure management. And what we have built is, we call that the security triangle, where every command needs to pass through the on-prem infrastructure. And that requires your client, your management station, your browser, or the computer that you use to administrate your infrastructure, to be behind your corporate firewall, right? The security triangle makes sure that you have direct network access to your on-prem infrastructure, And that is another barrier for, let's say, a bad actor to overcome. So we have authentication in the cloud with multi-factor authentication that basically is just securing access to a person's credential, right? We do have role-based access control in there that you can, restrict which user in your organization can do which actions with the infrastructure. And then we have the security triangle as a third mechanism to prevent anyone that is not inside of your corporate firewall from affecting anything that is running in your infrastructure. And our goal here was really to make this solution as secure as an on-prem infrastructure management tool would be, but give you the benefits of a cloud experience. So short answer is no. We prevent that using the security triangle.
Okay, got it. And then another question here, you compared the solution to, Nest or other similar technology. They're asking, what's the learning curve to navigate and to, deploy the solution?
Mm-hmm. Right. So we have tried to build the user interface with the application owner or the product owners in mind. So the people that are administrating the application clusters. And we have two phases to the administration user interface. One is for, let's call it for the IT organization that is contributing to a service catalog, right? And we consider, the administrators using this tool to be somewhat familiar with IT infrastructure tooling, with IT infrastructure concepts. So these personas would configure the more advanced capabilities of different services for different applications, like, the snapshot schedules, what are the data redundancy policies, what are expected data reduction ratios, etc. But then from a consumer perspective, like the user that is actually instantiating infrastructure, they're not exposed with that complexity. So we tried to eliminate all of the knobs and tunes that are otherwise complicated to understand by default for the regular user of the tooling. So the learning curve for the users that are familiar with VMware, that are familiar with Kubernetes, that are familiar with their databases is fairly low. The learning curve for IT administrators that are contributing to the service catalog do need to know some things about our architecture, do need to know some things about data storage, they need to know some things about networking and compute. However, we try to closely align it to industry standards.
Nice, nice. And so if folks want to get started with Nebulon, what do you recommend? So
as I mentioned, right, this is a cloud-based solution, right? Our administration sits in the cloud, so we can easily facilitate remote proof of concepts where you don't have to ship anything into your on-prem infrastructure. You don't need to travel anywhere. You can use our cloud to log in and try it out, and you can basically explore what is possible, how well it fits your needs for your applications that you're running on-prem. At the same time, you can request demos. So one of our solution architects can walk you through all of the capabilities that I've just outlined today, and they can give you a lot more detail about the solution and its benefits. So check out our website. That's a good starting point for you to get more information.
Very nice. Well, thank you so much for being on the event today, Tobias.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And thank you to Nebulon for supporting the event today. Check out the handout that's there in your audience console entitled Smart Infrastructure 101. It talks about the Nebulon solution and how it fits into supercharging your IT infrastructure for the future. And of course, also visit nebulon.com for more information.